Good evening and welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So, interesting topic tonight in regards to competitiveness and productivity and the lack thereof in Canada. And I think pretty shocking that Canada is now, 40-50% of the productivity that the United States enjoys when we were equal, 10 years ago. And I think we've all felt it and we know it. Real disposable incomes have not improved. Real median GDP has not improved. I think that we worry that this government's interest in growing the population base is to have growth, but not growth for all of us, just growth in total. And so it's not going to necessarily benefit us. I think, know that growth in real incomes, growth in productivity, growth in per capita GDP is the result of productivity and competitiveness, and is the objective that we should want, because that's what creates a better life. And I think some of us are concerned that, our current government is too worried about redistribution and not enough about growing the size of the pie. And I think that's where we need to focus. And so I want to give you tonight, because our professor said that he knew that productivity was bad, but that there weren't a lot of answers in how to improve it, how to create it. And so I want to give you my 6-point plan of how I would improve productivity and competitiveness in Canada if I was ever given the chance. I'm going to borrow some of my points from Richard Florida, who talked about talent, technology, and tolerance. And I'm going to add to that a trade for competitive advantage. I think that fiscal sanity, sustainability is key, and probably more key today with debts that have increased dramatically, where we have increased the debt as much in the last couple of years as we did in all the time from Confederation to the last couple of years. Some of it completely justified for the pandemic spending, et cetera, but still, an incredible debt load, such that I worry that we're either in or going to soon be in similar situation to, what people called the Canadian peso crisis back in 1990, before Chrétien and Martin really had to bring more fiscal sanity to the Canadian fiscal situation. And then finally, leadership from the top for a growth and prosperity agenda, which I don't think exists in today's environment. So let me go through them in order, if I could. First of all, talent. I think we need to have the best talent, the best human resources, the best people in the world, the best employees in the world. When you think about productivity, what that is based on more increase in capital that's utilized, and the capital is physical capital, financial capital, and human capital. And we've got to use it in a better manner. And if you can use human capital in a better manner, in a more effective manner, it's because they're better educated, they're better skilled, they're better knowledgeable, they're more creative. And so I think we need to have the best universities and colleges in the world. And I think we have some really good ones, and we can strive for better. And I think we need to give better access to those universities. And I think that comes with lower tuition and money for tuition loans that people can pay back when they've got the income, not necessarily with high debt burdens right away. And I think that a lot of programs show that if you're better educated in high school and motivated in high school, you're going to enter university or college in a far better manner. And I've interviewed some people that have run some of these university prep programs and innovation programs and technology programs for high school kids, and they have a huge impact. And I think that's one of the things that got most negatively impacted during COVID was people that went through high school and never got to go to school, at least real physical school. They didn't get to go to football and soccer and cheerleading and students council and clubs, because they spent the whole time at home on computers for school. And I think that's a real shame. And we need to change that for the people today. And then I think we need to create this startup nation attitude, and that is with incubators and accelerators and innovation and networking and all those things that bring people together, because I think connectivity is a key in talent, because talent doesn't exist on its own. It was interesting back in after the Great Recession, both Obama and McGuinty, and I don't think they were plagiarizing each other, came out with speeches that talked about how after this Great Recession we get goods, people, and ideas moving again, and goods was trade and infrastructure and people was training like we talked about and transit and schooling and universities, but ideas. How do you get ideas moving again? Was the big challenge and the big question mark, because none of them had really good ideas for that. And I think that we've grown to know, and there's been lots of reports about this, that connectivity is the key. That people need to be an agglomeration of different people in the same industry sector, clusters of development, and that takes that people bump into each other in downtown environments and office environments and incubator environments around the University of Waterloo and in tech circles, et cetera, et cetera. It is those, I think it was Alfred Marshall that talked about it, synchronicity in the air, the animal spirits in the air of entrepreneurship and innovation that are critical. So number one, we need to ensure that we've got the best talent. Number two is technology. And I got to ask a question. We had, BlackBerry and Northern Telecom and the company that created the space arm. We don't hear about those companies in Canada today. What happened to them? Where are they? We need to create those technological champions, Canadian technological champions. Again, how do we do that? I think we need to have a focus on technology, and it's not just IT technology. It's medical technology. It's mining technology. It's oil and gas technology. It's fishing technology. It is doing better with the things that we've got. I think that one of the challenges we've had, and I've had some interviews on this in the last decade, if not 2 decades, is such low interest rates and scarcity of housing with this unbelievable appreciation in housing that too much capital just went into real estate, which is not a productive investment. It's a house. And when you think about technological productivity improvements, houses are built the same way today as they were a long time ago. People have talked about modular homes. They've talked about these Lego plug-in things. They've talked about prefabrication. Not a lot of it's happened. A lot of it's still a bunch of people on site that are building homes. And so I don't think that investing so much money in real estate, in home building, is really overly productive. And I think it's been there because of scarcity and low interest rates. So you can borrow a lot of money, you can buy a bunch of homes, and you just sit back and let it appreciate. If that becomes less attractive, people are going to take their capital and they're going to invest in biotech. They're going to invest in IT. They're going to invest in technology opportunities. They're going to invest in other ways that are far more productive in the economy. And we can do that through 2 things. Number one, I don't think we need to have necessarily low interest rates again, but I do think we need to have stable interest rates. Business to be successful needs to have certainty. I think that lower, I don't think they need to go back down or should go back down to the incredibly low interest rates that we had in the last 10 years. But I think stable interest rates are key because people need to plan. People, I think, too much today are holding back and waiting, wondering what's going to happen to interest rates. And I think that, real estate has benefited from a lot of tax benefits that I worry aren't available in the rest of the economy, whether it's REITs, real estate investment trusts, or limited partnerships, or just high debt levels where interest is deductible. There's a bunch of benefits that real estate has from a tax standpoint. And I think the way to make that available to a lot of technology companies and mining companies and other things is flow through shares. And I think that should be available for biotech, for high tech, for frankly anyone that's investing in productive assets. I don't understand why you have to wait till you're profitable until you can deduct R&D expenses and interest costs and things like that. I think you should be able to do it when you're unprofitable, such that you can pass that on to other people and they can shelter their income with it. So I think flow through shares is an idea that's been talked about for a long period of time, and it should exist. So that's technology. Number 3 is trade for competitive advantage. We should eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. Period. Full stop. Why they exist is beyond me, and they've got to come down. I think we should have lower international trade barriers, and I think we've done a good job in that. But we do protect some sectors of society, and I talked about someone with the professor. When we do, if we do, and he used cell phone companies as one example, and he said that they're not investing greater amounts, even equal amounts, to competitive technology telecom companies in the United States, so that therefore they're gaining the benefit of some trade barriers or regulatory barriers that the government has created for them to protect them, but they're not paying us back through higher R&D spending or investment spending. And so I think that needs to be a quid pro quo. If there is some kind of regulatory barrier or trade barrier, you better be spending the money on R&D or infrastructure investment to comparable to what other people do. Because as he said, the professor said, rivalry, competition is what makes people better, makes them strive to be better. And too often we coddle our companies, and coddling for a while in infancy might make sense, just like you would do for your own kids. But once they grow up, if you coddle them anymore, they become entitled. You got to let them out into the world and make sure that they can compete and perform on their own. And it's applicable to kids, and it's applicable to companies. I also think that there's things that we should be doing with our critical mineral strategy. Critical minerals are going to be key in the world of the future. You know, people are talking about we need 8 times as many critical minerals in the future as we are currently mining today. We've got those resources. We should be thinking far more aggressively about how we exploit those resources, find them, employ people in them, benefit the indigenous communities where those resources are coming from, etc. And, you know, how long have I heard about the Ring of Fire? And it's a promise in the future. We should be building the infrastructure to exploit the Ring of Fire and northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, et cetera, et cetera. Oil and gas is going to be around for a long period of time. We can make it cleaner. We can turn it into hydrogen, which doesn't have any carbon in it. We can use and utilize carbon capture, but oil and gas is the bulk of our energy today. It will be the bulk of our energy for the foreseeable future, and we should be treasuring that resource and enjoying it and making it cleaner at the same time. And at the same time, we should be thinking about things like lithium for batteries and uranium for nuclear power plants. I think infrastructure is also key. And the infrastructure expenditures in Biden's plan in the United States is one of the best examples. When you can take a look at some of the, infrastructure, if you've flown through LaGuardia recently, it's unbelievable what you can do to fix things up. We should be fixing those things up. The professor talked about high-speed rail between Montreal and Toronto and how that would, number one, be a great infrastructure, but also help rivalry, help competition, help connectivity, help technology. I think for all those reasons, we should have that high-speed rail and extend it after Montreal to Toronto, to Quebec City, to Windsor, and maybe to Niagara and connect in with Detroit and Buffalo. And then I think transit in our cities, Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, etc., Greater Toronto Area. Greater Toronto Area is going to be the 3rd largest metropolitan region in all of North America within the next 5 years. And yet we don't have transit. We don't have a vision. We don't have a government system that has that vision associated with it. Tolerance. Diversity is a strength, is something we talk about, but do we live it? We need different people in different environments, from different geographies, from different races, from different religions, from different languages, mixing together and cultivating a more interesting solution to every problem. Too often we have groupthink because everyone looks the same. And I think we need to think about building a far more tolerant, diverse society and take that lingo about diversity as our strength to inclusion is our choice. Fiscal sanity. This is going to be a controversial one. I really worry that our debt burden, our deficit situation is untenable and unsustainable and needs to change. And I think there's 2 ways that you do that. Number one, you got to eliminate red tape. You can't just slash government, but by eliminating red tape, you can then cut government programs, and it should be done through attrition, retirement, etc. I think red tape is just added up over and over and over again. We got to get rid of it. But then the second thing that I'd recommend is an increase in the GST. I think Stephen Harper was wrong to cut it. And he cut it, remember, when we were, doing unbelievably well before the Great Recession. He did exactly what Keynes said you never do. He spiked the punch bowl just as the party was getting going, and it made the party far worse. And as you may remember, the Canadian dollar went, when he did that, cutting the GST up to about 103 the US bucks. And then after the Great Recession came down dramatically. And so he gave away the fiscal capability that we could have used and needed in the Great Recession ahead of time and made it far worse. Now with high inflation, if we increase the GST, we would be decreasing inflation. We would be dampening demand, not through higher interest rates, but through slightly higher taxation. But that benefit, the cost of the GST, the benefit from that would go into bringing our deficit down. And we should be open that says we may reduce it in the future if we have a recession. And so therefore the GST at one set number shouldn't be thought of as sacrosanct and something that's going to stay. It can fluctuate. And so I think that we could be increasing it by 1 or 2 points today. The city governments are talking about maybe 1 point going to the cities, and I think that makes a ton of sense. So 1 or 2 points today, but we could reduce it again if there is a recession in the future. And then my last point, and I frankly think this is one of the most important ones that's not talked about enough. And that is we need a leadership agenda from the top for growth and prosperity. People have talked about how there's not enough business people, technological people involved in our cabinet in Ottawa. That in the past we had, Flaherty and Harper, we had Martin and Chrétien, we had Turner and Trudeau, we had lots of people that were business minded, Bay Street oriented, or downtown Montreal oriented, as well as the lawyers and the professors and the career politicians that were also in government. I think you need that business sense. And I think this former Minister of Finance that talked about there was no growth attitude, no growth agenda, no prosperity agenda in Ottawa was opening our eyes to something. And I think we need that. And so I think that's got to come from the top. So that's my 6-point plan. Talent, technology, trade for competitive advantage, tolerance, fiscal sanity, and leadership from the top for a growth and prosperity agenda. Thanks for joining me. That's the Brian Crombie Show on Saga 960. Good night.